whatever reason, this does not
Hi everyone, and welcome to our TeensRead Preview. We're so excited that you could join us today to talk about some of our most anticipated fall books. If you don't know me, my name is Melissa, and you'll also see Brooke, Megan, Michelle, and Fernanda as we'll take turns talking about some of our favorite forthcoming books. Also joining us today is our special guest, Tony Cliff, graphic novelist and author of the July Dark series. We're thrilled that he's able to be here to talk about his latest installment in this series and answer some questions from you guys. If you come up with a question that you would like to ask Tony during the event, please let us know on Twitter and we can ask it on your behalf. We'll also be drawing names for prizes a bit later, and we'll hear from you during a discussion. As a reminder, please join in the conversation with us on Twitter using the hashtag TeensReadFeed and tagging us at Rainbow Books. And now I'll turn it over to Brooke to begin.
Okay. First up is The Dark Beneath the Ice by Amalinda Berube, who's a debut Canadian author who lives in Ottawa. This story is for readers who love speculative fiction, horror, and ghost stories, and it's described as Black Swan meets paranormal activity. It follows our main character, Marianne, a dancer whose life has quickly taken a turn for the worse, and she starts to wonder if she's losing her grip on reality. The night Marianne's father finally leaves for good, she doesn't remember a thing, except her vivid dream of an icy lake and someone trying its hardest to drown her. When she wakes up, all she knows is that her mother is checking herself into a psychiatric hospital, leaving Marianne to live with her aunt. Because of everything that's going on in her life, she's forced to quit dancing, the one thing she loves. Things couldn't seem to get much worse, right? But when chalkboards begin cracking as she walks past, mirrors shatter in front of her, and streetlights start exploding around her, people start whispering that maybe Marianne's going just as crazy as her mother. But when she starts blacking out, or as they refer to it in the book, losing time, Marianne starts to believe there's a dark entity stalking her, and the only person who believes that she might actually be possessed is the daughter of the town psychic. So what's the only option left to do when you believe you're possessed? An exorcism, of course. But in their first attempt to get rid of this entity that's causing her blackouts, they discover that the demon haunting Marianne is demanding that she give back what's been stolen from her. And yes, the demon is female. So Marianne is left with having to uncover the truth in order to figure out what she owes back before she's trapped in the darkness of the other side for good. This standalone novel is perfect for fans of Diary of a Haunting and The Girl from the Well, and with an LGBTQ main character, it also speaks to those who want to read content with diverse characters. The novel is atmospheric, beautifully written, and will pull readers under from the first page. Next book, you may have heard of this one. This is Mirage by Somaya Daud. It's a stunning epic fantasy, and it's the first in a trilogy. Come to Star Wars meets Red Queen. This is a fantasy science fiction set in a star system dominated by a ruthless empire. Amani is a poor 18-year-old girl living on an isolated moon called Cadiz. And like many girls her age, she dreams of more. She wants to see the life outside of her planet and yearns for adventure. But when she gets what she's hoping for, it's not exactly what she expected. When the Vath invade Cadiz and threaten to erase the customs and tradition of her people, Amani is kidnapped and taken to the royal palace, where she finds she's a dead ringer and lookalike for the evil Princess Mura. This princess is so hated by her people that she actually needs a body double to serve in her place in public for fear of her safety. This is where Amani comes in, as she's forced to train as her body double and shield. And even though she starts to find a bit of comfort in the charming fiancé of the princess, she knows that ultimately her own life could be taken at any wrong move she makes, and that she'll have to fight to save the culture of the people. Now, as anyone who recently saw the movie Get Out knows, genre bending can make for an amazing story. And Mirage's genre is an unusual, bold blend as it combines one very hot genre of fantasy with one that's coming up in the mainstream for YA readers, science fiction, with a little dash of history. While the story is set in another world, much of the plot, politics, and setting were inspired by colonialism in Morocco, which is where the author's family is from. So there's underlying politics throughout. And besides the intriguing premise, one of the things the editor notes about this book is just how beautiful the writing is. She calls it fabulous literary writing with a very commercial premise, and says that Somaya writes sentences that just make you sigh. This probably stems from her background in poetry. And when she's not writing her own poems, she translates Arabic poetry in her free time, and she included many of those poems throughout Mirage. And that serves as a nod to a major theme of the book, as many of the Arabic poems that were written as acts of rebellion against an oppressive regime. Not only is this title an in-house favorite with the publisher and editors, it's also received some great blurbs from authors like Roshani Chasky, Courtney Summers, who's coming up on our list, and Veronica Roth, author of the Divergent series, who said this about the book. Mirage is full of characters who feel like they existed long before the story began, and with a rich world that is beautiful as it is cruel. Somaya Daoud is a rare talent, a smart, romantic, exciting debut. Next is the latest from Canadian favorite and critically acclaimed Courtney Summers. This is Sadie, a page-turning thriller with Courtney's signature gritty storytelling, and as the editor describes it, a plot that practically burns through the pages. This one is perfect for fans of true crime podcasts like Serial and X-Town. Our main character, Sadie, has been raising her sister Maddie on her own in an isolated small town, just trying to make ends meet and keep her safe. So she's absolutely devastated when Maddie is found dead, and she's quickly enraged when a shoddy police investigation provides no answers. So Sadie decides to set out on the road with the few clues she has to find the killer herself and get justice for her sister. But when a radio personality working on a story about small American towns catches wind of the story at a local gas station, he knows his next big scoop is to track down Sadie and document his search in his own Serial-like podcast. Not just to find answers about Sadie's sister's death or her revenge mission, but before it's too late to save Sadie herself, before she finds the answer and person she's searching for. Sadie is coined as a gripping novel about the depth of sisterly love that will keep you on the edge of your seat to the last page, and is poised to be the next book you won't be able to stop talking about. Plus, it already has some knockout reviews, including one from Veronica Roth, who calls it a haunting, gut-wrenching, and relentlessly compelling read. Sadie grabs you and won't let you go until you've borne witness. This book is also a huge in-house favorite at Macmillan, and they believe this will be the title that really breaks out Courtney's career and will make her the go-to thriller writer for YA. Okay. Next is the first book in a 3-book series from the debut author of Rebecca Shaver, who grew up in the Canadian prairies. Not Even Bones is one of the best comp mashups I've come across, as it's described as Dexter meets This Savage Song. But it also has one of the best taglines I've ever heard, as the line reads, "Nita doesn't murder supernatural beings and sell their body parts on the internet. Her mother does that." Once we heard that at our sales conference, we were hooked. The story follows Nita, a teenage girl who dissects the supernatural bodies her mom brings home and helps her sell the body parts in the black market. But she's in it for the science, not the money. To say the story has moral ambiguity is an understatement. But when her mom brings home a live subject, that's too much for Nita. She's done and wants out. But Nita's been keeping a secret. She too is a monster. So when her conscience wins out and she attempts to free her mother's latest victim, the black market kidnappers end up taking Nita in its place. How will Nita survive and escape? With the age-old saying, if you can't beat them, join them. Nita will have to become the kingpin of body part selling black market in order to wipe them out for good. But is she willing to become the worst kind of monster? This book has a lot going for it already, as this super dark version of YA urban fantasy has seen tons of success with authors like Victoria Schwab and Lee Bardugo. But it's also a fast-paced, life or death page turner that will keep readers biting their nails. And of course, because of the gruesome, dark subject matter, it should have a built-in fan base with fans of shows like Dexter and possible crossover appeal for old school faves like CSI and Criminal Minds. There's also a very diverse cast, as the book takes place in a present-day alternate version of Peru, and most of the characters are people of color. There's a lot of excitement for this book so far. The book deal has already been announced in the Hollywood Reporter, and the publisher has decided Rebecca will go on tour with 3 other HMH dark fantasy authors. And as I mentioned, the publisher has already signed on to make this a trilogy, and it's been chosen as a Raincoast Red Pick selection by our YA savvy rep Jen, who has shown her knack for picking hits time and time again. So this should be one to watch. Okay, the next one may look familiar as it's the graphic on your event Evite and on your catalogs there. This is Bibliophile by Jane Mount and is published by Chronicle Books. This is the ultimate book for book lovers like ourselves. Renowned and award-winning artist Jane Mount brings literary people, places, and things to life in this bookworm's treasure trove of a collection. First off, readers will discover their next great read in 50 lovingly curated illustrated book stacks, which are organized by theme, including everything from 19th century literary classics, favorite fantasy novels, great adventure stories, feminist must-reads, and essential cookbooks. But it's not just beautiful stacks of illustrated book recommendations. The book also allows bibliophiles to see the favorite writing spots of famous writers and meet their pets, see some of the most striking libraries from around the globe, meet some of the most charming bookstore cats, take a quiz on the plot lines of classic fiction, learn about all sorts of people who believe in the magic of books, from authors to booksellers, and also explore independent bookstores from around the world, including 3 from right here in Canada, which include Monroe's Books in Victoria, BC, Type Books in Toronto, and Library John and Quarterly in Montreal. Bibliophile is not only gorgeous and self-indulgent goodness for all things bookish, it's also an essential reference for readers of any genre and will be perfect for book lovers, English majors, aspiring writers, avid readers, and basically all of us. Along with the Bibliophile book, Chronicle is also releasing a Bibliophile note card set, which will feature Jane's iconic book stack artwork. And you've each got one of those note cards in your swag bag with a bookmark. And they're also producing 3 different Bibliophile flower vases, which are so cool and unique. They're actually like solid ceramic flower vases with beautiful hand-drawn paintings to make it look like book covers. And another cool thing to go along with the series is if you pre-order this Bibliophile book, before it comes out in September, Chronicle's offering these really cute enamel pins as your pre-order prize. And for all the booksellers and librarians out there, this is for you. Raincoast will be running a Bibliophile display contest, and the prize will be a custom art piece of your own store or library done by Jane Mount herself. All you have to do is post a picture of your Bibliophile themed display on Instagram with one of the Bibliophile products from the series. Use the hashtag #BibliophileBook and tag us in Chronicle Books between the months of September and November. If you want more info on that, you can reach out to your Raincoast rep or email me at druck@raincoast.com for all the details. It should be a lot of fun to see all those Bibliophile themed displays. Next book is Dare You to Lie by Amber Lynn Natush, again a Canadian author and indie pub favorite who was born and raised in Winnipeg. She's the best-selling author of the Adult Cage series, but this is her debut YA with crossover appeal. Described as Pretty Little Liars meets Riverdale, this is fast-paced action thriller with tons of chemistry and the perfect amount of edginess. And with a smart, sassy heroine that's come to this generation's Veronica Mars, readers are sure to love her. It follows main character Kylene, who is forced to move back to her hometown to live with her grandfather after her dad, an FBI agent, is framed for murder. But this return to home sweet home is anything but, as she's returning to a town and a boy who betrayed her. In the quest to clear her dad's name and put the ghost of Scandal's past behind her, Kylene can't help her growing attraction to the rookie FBI agent assigned to protect her. And with Kai being someone to definitely hold a grudge, she's also determined to expose the secrets of the town that once turned its back on her. In addition to being a really great mystery, this novel also taps into social issues like bullying, social media shaming, and the pressures we can all put on ourselves to achieve at all costs. But Amber writes it in such a realistic way that it doesn't feel preachy. And while the book is gritty and edgy at times, it's never too dark or ominous. With already great blurbs from best-selling authors and more to come from people like Roshani Chosky, Amber has already signed on for a sequel for Dare You to Lie. Okay. That's it for me. I'm going to turn it over to Megan now.
Good morning, guys. It's Saturday, TeensRead time. I made it up here without falling into my face, so everything is great. So first up for me is, I should tell you who I am first. I'm Megan. I'm sales manager at Raincoast. First up is Check Please by Ngozi Ukazu. A book I frankly devoured and haven't shut up about since. Ask any of my colleagues. I basically read it and I've walked around the office telling everyone why they haven't read it. So this is a collection of the first half of the webcomic, and it's totally engrossing and hilarious. I laughed out loud in public like an idiot to myself more than a few times. So Vancouverites, you might have seen me. In this book, our main character, Eric Biddy Biddle, comes from a figure skating background. So when he makes the prestigious Samuel University hockey team, he'll have to learn how to take a hit. And who better to teach him than the dreamy Canadian captain of the team, son of a famous Montreal Canadiens player. And you'll notice, oh, go back. That's him right there with those dreamy, like, kind of like a dreamy Reggie Mantle. Yeah, there. Biddy, in between hockey and his other favorite pastimes, which are baking and video blogging, starts to fall for the moody Captain Jack. And again, I can't state clearly how much I loved this book as I quickly fall into smiles and squeals and all sorts of strange noises. It will surprise you and subvert expectations, taking the narrative to interesting places. The hockey bros in the house where Biddy lives will surprise you in the best possible ways. Read this book. Okay, and next up is an anthology edited by Marieke Nijkamp, author of the New York Times bestselling books Before I Let Go and This Is Where It Ends. Unbroken explores disability in fiction with stories told from the viewpoint of disabled main characters. I'm so excited about this one, and speaking as someone with a chronic illness, it's rare to see disabled characters in a book where they don't immediately die or serve as tools for another character's growth, or basically give an inspiring speech and then disappear. So the contributing authors in this include Cody Keplinger, Heidi Heilig, Christine Willis, and many more. Each contributing author identifies as disabled along a physical, mental, or neurodiverse axis, and several are founding or active members in the We Need Diverse Books movement. So an important book and a really great read. Speaking of important books, next on our list is The Unwanted by Dawn Brown, acclaimed author and illustrator of Drowned City, which is a book on Hurricane Katrina and New Orleans, and The Great American Dust Bowl. So this book tackles tough subject matter, showing both the horror and hope of the ongoing refugee crisis in Syria. Current events, history, immigration, and many more important topics are covered. Author Dawn Brown visited refugee camps in Greece to hear survivor stories, many of which are included. And the publisher of the book, Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, sent boxes of books to all the camps that were visited, and they're donating to the International Rescue Committee in honor of the book. This is an excellent tool for teachers and parents, or for anyone who wants to learn more about the conflict. We often grow numb to the news stories. We hear about this all the time. But this really gives us the stories of the refugees themselves, and having a visual representation of the human strife makes it more visceral and a more direct call to action. Next, A Blade So Black by L.L. McKinney. Think Alice in Wonderland as urban fantasy set in real-world Atlanta. So, can I say anymore? Main character Alice is trained to battle monstrous creatures in the dark dream realm known as Wonderland, all the while balancing overprotective moms, slipping grades, high-maintenance best friend, and general high school stuff. Life isn't always easy, even for this Buffy the Vampire-esque ferocious protagonist. When Alice's handsome and enigmatic mentor is poisoned with the madness, Alice must embark on a journey further into Wonderland than she's ever ventured before. This debut novel has a strong romance set against a lush dream world, all the while tackling big themes like race relations, forgiveness, grief, and loyalty. And side note, this is my favorite thing that I found. The Wonderland cast has been reimagined in the best possible way. So the Mad Hatter is a young David Bowie-esque rogue. Tweedledee and Tweedledum are, I'm not kidding you, hot Russian warrior twins. Yes, you heard that right. And the Caterpillar is a narcoleptic bartender who concocts special potions. We're all involved. Now for something completely different. We have After the Fire by Will Hill. This is a gripping, dark, fictional account of the final days of a religious cult seen through the eyes of a teenage girl. This ripped from the headlines book follows protagonist Moonbeam, who is starting to doubt the imposing Father John's rules and warnings about never talking to outsiders. And then came the fire. ... Film and TV rights have been optioned by Gunpowder and Sky, which is an indie studio whose goal is to create content that resonates and impacts pop culture conversation by empowering creators. So expect to hear a lot more about this one for sure. And finally for me is The Boneless Mercies by April Genevieve Ducot. The Boneless Mercies are a group of girls hired to kill quickly, quietly, and mercifully. I was going to say mercilessly. Saturday morning, sorry. All is poised to come to an end, though, when main character Frey wearies on the so-called death trade. With an unstoppable monster ravaging a nearby town, Frey sees the Mercies one chance out, a chance for a new future. So this dark, gorgeously drawn standalone book is for fans of Leigh Bardugo and B. Schwab. The women and girls in the book take center stage. They're strong, fierce, complex, loving, and villainous, but must still exist in an inherently sexist society. Sound familiar? So definitely another one that you will want to read. And that's it for me. So next up, I believe, is the lovely Michelle.
Switch up. Hi everyone, I'm Michelle. I'm the sales assistant at Raincoast. And my first book that I'm going to talk about today is On a Sunbeam by Tilly Walden. And I feel like this one passes my test of I know it must be good because I'm willing to read it on my computer in PDF form, which is always very awkward, especially for a graphic novel. But I've been devouring this one at my desk all week. You might remember Walden's previous book, Spinning, which we talked about a few previews ago. That one made a ton of best of lists, and I know it was a personal favorite of a lot of Raincoasters. So On a Sunbeam started out as a webcomic that Walden drew over the span of 8 months, and she's now turned it into a book. It's set in a beautifully imaginative, made-up world full of abandoned outposts and crumbling buildings. The spreads are absolutely stunning, and the mystery of all the different worlds and buildings plays an active role in the drama of main character Mia's life. We first meet Mia as she joins a tight-knit crew aboard a spaceship that travels around to restore old buildings throughout the universe. We don't know why she's here, and she seems really lost, really kind of adrift. And then the story flashes back in time 5 years. We find Mia at a swanky boarding school, and she also kind of seems to be kind of in the same mental state where she just seems really lost. She lands herself in detention on the first day of class where she meets fellow outcast Grace, who she quickly latches onto. So then the story just switches back and forth between the two timelines, and then we gradually get the story of Grace and Mia's epic romance. And I love the way that Walden uses setting in this story. The move to outer space is partially both the sci-fi, action, and adventure, but it also really provides a perfectly brooding backdrop to Mia's sadness. You can see all the nice interiors here. And on top of that, Walden took the opportunity to create a world that's thoughtful and diverse. I know it can be frustrating in like sci-fi and fantasy where you are like, oh, they can imagine any world that they want, and then it's still just a bunch of dudes. Instead of this universe, most of the characters are women or non-binary, and you just see a lot of different kind of diverse like body types and races, and it's just so effortless and nice, and it's not really commented on like always directly, but there is one of the main characters who is non-binary, and they do talk about that quite a bit. And then she also tackles like environmental issues and really cool stuff like that. So I like that the setting is really thoughtful and intentional. So this is a space story unlike anything you've ever read, and you'll want to go back to it again and again. Okay, next up is The Grim Lovelies by Megan Shepherd. So in Grim Lovelies, Megan Shepherd takes the classic Cinderella fairy tale, moves it to modern day Paris, and adds a few sinister twists. So this is for anyone who, you know, saw Cinderella and they were like, this got resolved a little too easily. I don't really trust that prince. Instead of a wicked stepmother, we get Mata Vitora, a powerful witch who has control over everything her servants do, including her most faithful servant, Nook, who has never stepped over the threshold of her mistress's Parisian townhouse. Anouk is a beastie, enchanted from animal to human. She remembers nothing from her life before and envies the human world she watches from the windows. When Monodatora is murdered, Anouk's young life is thrown into chaos. In 3 days, all of the witch's spells will fade, including the spell keeping Anouk and her beastie friends human, starting a race against the clock to save themselves. The premise creates a lot of unique challenges for the characters. Anouk looks like an average 17-year-old, but in reality, she's only been alive for a human for 1 year. So it makes all of her choices as a character that much more interesting. She's forced to learn on the go. She really kind of learns to trust her intuition, which is something that I really appreciated. So she has kind of a hard time judging whether people are friend or foe, including a group of goblins and even some of her fellow beasties. So she's up against some pretty formidable villains, including a prince who is as dangerous as he is charming. And there will be a second book in the series. It's a good thing because you'll want to stick around to find out more about the world of the beasties when you're done this one. Okay, and next is Teen Trailblazers by Jennifer Calvert and illustrated by Vesna Asanovic. So Teen Trailblazers features short, informative bios of young women who changed the world all before the age of 20. Covers a wide historical range from teen queen Cleopatra to modern activists like Emma Watson, Emma Gonzalez, and Jazz Jennings. There are lots of women included who you're probably familiar with, including Joan of Arc, Frida Kahlo, Anne Frank, and Malala Yousafzai. But the book also highlights some lesser-known historical figures like Jackie Mitchell, who was one of the first female pitchers in pro baseball, or Barbara Johns, Claudette Colvin, and Elizabeth Eckford, who were all civil rights activists. And as a nice bonus for us bookish folks, Calvert has included quite a few writers, including Jane Austen, Phyllis Wheatley, Mary Shelley, Nellie Bly, and S.E. Hinton. The book in general is geared towards younger teens. I'd say it's probably perfect for 12 to 13-year-olds. And the tone is really light and uplifting, and it focuses on the small everyday acts that fellow teens can do to be trailblazers in their own right. It even includes handy sidebars with inspiration for how to develop your own interests and opinions in a style similar to the women featured. And the bios are accompanied by cute portraits and illustrations by Canadian illustrator Vesna Asanovic. Awesome. And then next is History versus Women, The Defiant Lives That They Don't Want You to Know by Anita Sarkeesian and Ebony Adams. So this one is essentially like the non-PG version of the last title. So I think you can probably see on the screen that there's a section called Ruthless Villains. So they're not just tackling the easy stuff here. So Sarkeesian is the creator of Feminist Frequency, a not-for-profit educational organization that analyzes the media's relationship to gender, race, and sexuality. And you might recognize Sarkeesian from one video series in particular, Tropes versus Women, which is just as well known for the content as for the ensuing harassment that was launched against her and other women, which came to be known later as Gamergate. So she's encountered like a ton of death threats and just really awful things, but clearly, I mean, she's very passionate about this kind of stuff that she's willing to battle all of that. And it just goes to show that sadly, talking about these things is still somehow controversial. And then Ebony Adams, the other contributor, is also super cool. She's an author and an activist. She has a PhD, and her work focuses on the lives and work of Black women in the diaspora. So Sarkeesian and Adams highlight 25 diverse women, some of them the types of people you might aspire to be, while others are more complicated figures who make questionable or even malicious choices to make their mark. And I think Sarkeesian and Adams are really what sets this title apart from similar books about historical women. The content is really well researched, and the writing goes beyond simple bios and instead probes the framework of who we consider to be notable or worthy women and why we perceive them to be that way. Awesome. So next is Blanca and Roja by Anne-Marie McLemore. This is the fourth book from McLemore. Her previous books have garnered many awards and distinctions, including a Stonewall honor, a Prince nomination, and the longlist for the National Book Award. And after reading just a few pages of McLemore's books, it's no surprise why she's achieved such acclaim. Her books are so poetic and full of diverse characters. Booklet says, "No one does magical realism quite like McLemore." In this latest book, she weaves together multiple fairy tales, including Swan Lake and the Grimm Brothers' tales Snow White and Red Rose, featuring queer, trans, and Latina characters. It tells the story of the Del Cisne sisters, who, though only 1 year apart in age, couldn't be less alike in looks and temperament. The oldest, Blanca, is fair-haired and demure, while younger Roja has attempted to match her red-black hair. Despite their outward appearances, the sisters work to make themselves alike in as many ways as possible in order to try and outwit a bevy of swans waiting for them deep in the woods. Because of a generations-old spell that they know that, like all Dalsizne sisters before them, one day the swans will pull them into a dangerous game that will leave one of them a girl and trap the other forever in the body of a swan. But when 2 local boys become drawn into the game, the swan spell intertwines with strange and unpredictable magic lacing the woods, and all 4 of their fates depend on facing truths that could either save or destroy them. It's the captivating story of sisters, friendship, love, hatred, and the price we pay to protect our hearts. And I've been reading this one, I'll link to, and it's so beautiful, and I just want to like put it under my pillow and think of it all. Okay, so the next one is Black Wings Beating by Alex London. This is the first book in a trilogy. Alex London previously wrote the YA novel Proxy. This book is equal parts Taryn Matharu's The Novice and Kristen Cashier's Bracelet, but set in a world of cutthroat falconry. It follows the story of twin siblings, Bryson and Kylie, both of them survivors. Bryson of the birds and beatings his father gave him, and Kylie of the self-imposed silencing of her innate talents for falconry. The twins have suffered through poverty to survive the harsh conditions of the 6 villages, a falconer's training post on the edge of a remote mountain range where they must look after the family hawking business after their father's death. The family business is finally breaking even after 4 years, but when Bryson's love interest racks up a debt he cannot repay, Bryson offers to do it for him by hunting and trapping the legendary ghost eagle, the greatest of few starry birds and a solitary killer. The twins embark on the journey together. Bryson goes for the boy he loves and the glory he's long craved, and Kylie goes to atone for her past and protect her brother's future. But both are hunted by those who seek more power. What Bryson and Kylie don't yet know is that they are merely pawns in an arms race, for a territorial war is brewing on the horizon, and both sides want the greatest weapon nature ever created, the ghost eagle. If you're looking for action adventure, this book has definitely got it. London has created an impeccably lush world due to some intense research into falconry and bird culture, and the book examines the line between cultural differences, prejudices, and fanaticism. The impending war in the story isn't just about physical borders, but a difference in worldview and religion. Okay, and that is my last book. Melissa's up next.
Okay, so my first book is Kingdom of Ash by Sarah J. Maas, and I feel like I don't really need to say anything else, just leave it here, but in case you're not sure, it's the eagerly awaited conclusion to the New York Times best-selling Throne of Glass series, and it promises to be more heart-stopping than ever. It's the end of an era, and Bloomsbury will be celebrating the series leading up to the book's release on Twitter, so pay attention in the coming months, and you'll see lots of celebration for this. And more books will be coming from Sarah with the spin-off Court of Thorns and Roses series in 2019, along with Crescent City, the start of her new adult fantasy series, which is coming in fall 2019. Bloomsbury also just announced that they are creating a collector's edition of Throne of Glass, which will be out in November, which features stunning art on the cover, along with a new map of Aurelia, beautiful new interior pages, a ribbon pull, and more in a deluxe package. The Darkest Star by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This is the first book in the New Origin series, which is a spin-off from her best-selling Lux series. How many of you have read the Lux series before? Okay, so if you have, you'll know that you'll recognize Luke, who is the main character in this one, and he was first introduced in the Lux series. But if you haven't read the series, you can still read this as a standalone series, and you don't need to be familiar with the world or the characters before reading it. But those who have read it will recognize some familiar characters. You can expect tons of action, mystery, and a lot of romance as Edie is catapulted into a world that she'd only heard about when she meets the handsome Luke at a club and everything she knows is turned upside down. Next is Salt by Hannah Moskowitz. This is a really great adventure book with sea monsters by Hannah Moskowitz, author of Gina Finn, The History of Glitter and Blood, Gone, 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 and more. Think Pirates of the Caribbean, but with a family dynamic of Stranger Things. Indy and his siblings, brilliant Zulu, mischievous Oscar, and determined Beliza, have only known life hunting down sea monsters. but the parents disappeared during a hunt and are now gone. Indy wants to escape the life, but his sister Belisa is on a mission of revenge for the monster responsible for their parents' death. Plus, there are the directions contained in his parents' journal that point to a treasure which could keep Belisa's mind off revenge. A fun and fast-paced book that deals with deeper issues throughout, Salt has something for everyone. Next is Arch Enemies by Marissa Meyer. As you may have heard, she just announced that Renegades will now be a trilogy. So Arch Enemies is now the second installment in the series that will pick up after the cliffhanger ending in Renegades. Marissa Meyer created a whole new superhero world in Renegades with unique superpowers for the characters, such as the ability to create smoke out of thin air, or everything you draw coming to life. And you'll learn more about this world in Arch Enemies. With action, romance, intrigue, and a fantastic cast of characters, Marissa Meyer has created another series that you won't be able to put down. Empress of All Seasons by Nico Jean. As you can see, there is now a cover. They just revealed this cover yesterday, and we're so excited that we can show you guys today. So it's a big, epic, sweeping fantasy novel that is inspired by the author's own Japanese heritage, so it's also own voices. Every year, there's a deadly competition where people can compete to become the next empress. They just have to survive the enchanted seasonal rooms in the palace. Marie has been training to become the next empress her whole life, so winning shouldn't be a problem. She's hiding a secret. She is a yokai, a person with the ability to turn into a monster, which the emperor is determined to destroy. Exploring tolerance and equality and balancing action, love, and political stakes, this is a beautifully written standalone fantasy that was inspired by Japanese folklore and will keep you hooked from the very beginning. And it might kind of remind you of Flame in the Mist by Renee Adia, but that one features samurais, and this one has yokai. So, then we have What You Hide by Natalie D. Richards. A new suspense thriller from Natalie D. Richards, author of One Was Lost and All Fall Down. Told in dual perspectives, What You Hide follows Spencer, a teen who is working at the library for community service after being caught climbing the library roof, and Mallory, who is 16 and homeless and is trying to stay under the radar. Then sinister things start happening at the library, and the suspicion shifts to Mallory. Spencer and Mallory have to figure out who the real culprit is before it's too late. While also exploring issues of homelessness and emotional abuse, this is a book that will keep you guessing until the end. Dear Heartbreak, edited by Heather Demetrios. In this anthology, YA authors answer real letters from real teens about the dark side of love. So real teens actually wrote letters to heartbreak, and YA authors including Gail Borman, Becky Albertelli, Nina LaCour, Libba Bray, Sandia Menon, and more respond to these letters. Each of these authors chose the letter that spoke to them, and the letters deal with everything from breakups, to dating violence and abuse, to feeling unlovable, to unrequited love, and more. It's very honest, and we do have ARCs, so I read a few of these letters, and they did make me cry, but they are also ultimately uplifting and hopeful. Okay, and then we're going to go briefly through some series titles. I'm going to talk a little bit less about these, so we don't say any spoilers or anything. So the first one is Tell Me No Lies by A.B. Geiger. It's the conclusion to the follow-up to the Follow Me Back duology by A.B. Geiger, who has over 250,000 followers on Wattpad, and Follow Me Back has over 5.9 million reads on Wattpad. Tell Me No Lies picks up 1 month after the cliffhanger ending of the first book, and it's a thriller for the online generation. Then we have Ruin of Stars by Lindsay Miller. This is the sequel to Mask of Shadows and the final book in the duology. It follows Sal, a gender-fluid thief, and their quest for revenge on the lords who killed their family. Kirsten White, New York Times bestselling author of Anti-Jargon, blurbed Mask of Shadows, saying, an intriguing world and a fantastically compelling main character make for a can't-miss debut. Then Delilah Dirk and the Pillars of Hercules by Vancouver author Tony Cliff. I'm obviously not going to talk about this one in detail because Tony will tell you about it in a few minutes, but it's the third installment in this series, and Publishers Weekly just wrote a review of this book, saying Cliff has created an engaging and daring character that is equal parts Lara Croft and Indiana Jones. And Disney has optioned the first book for a movie. Next, we have Art Boss by Kayla Kagan. This is the companion novel to Piper Perish, which was Kayla Kagan's debut book. And so this follows Piper's journey as she is in New York City and in college. It's about art, activism, and coming of age in a new place, as Piper wants to create art that makes a difference. There will be spot illustrations throughout the text, which acts as Piper's journal. Then we have The Summoner's Handbook by Taryn Matheru. It's a companion guide to the Summoner series, which consists of The Novice, The Inquisition, The Battle Mage, and the new prequel, The Outcast, which just released. This companion guide contains journal entries, illustrated demonology, maps, artwork, and more that fans of the series will love. And Carols and Chaos by Cindy Anstey. She is also a Canadian author, and this is a companion novel to Suitors and Sabotage. So Carols and Chaos follows ladies' maid Kate Darby and valet Matt Harlow in this historical fiction novel set at Christmas time. It's a charming, sweet read, perfect for the holidays. And since it's a companion novel, you don't need to have read Suitors and Sabotage to pick this one up. Wind Rider by PC Cast. From the best-selling author of the House of Night series comes a new installment in the Tales of a New World series. With a strong female protagonist and plenty of action, this is an exciting new addition to the series, and there will be more to come from PC Cast. Then we have The World of Throne of Glass. We actually found out that this has just been postponed until next year, but it will be an all-encompassing guidebook that offers an in-depth at Aelin's world and everything Throne of Glass. Then we have West by Edith Catu. This is a long-awaited sequel to East, and 2018 is the 15th anniversary of its publication. Have any of you read East? Oh, okay. If not, East is a sweeping, romantic adventure story that received numerous accolades, including a School Library Journal Star Review, and was picked as School Library Journal's Best Book of the Year. In West, fierce heroine Rose sets off on a dangerous journey to save her true love. And as Cinda Williams-China, New York Times bestselling author of The Shattered Realms, says, in this luminous companion to East, Rose confronts new dangers and old enemies in a high-stakes game in which the fate of the world and everyone she loves hangs in the balance. If I'm ever in a life or death struggle against impossible odds, I want Rose by my side. And then finally, we have Once a King by Erin Summerhill. This is a new spin-off story in the Clash of Kingdoms world that follows young King Adrian and Lyra, a girl who can control the wind, as Adrian attempts to fix the mistakes of the past and find a new way forward. This is firmly linked with the characters from Ever the Hunted and Ever the Brave, but it is a spin-off, so you don't need to have read those to read this one. With slow-burn romance, political intrigue, and plenty of action, this is a great new fantasy novel by an author that Sarah J. Maas calls absolutely marvelous. And now I will turn it over to Fernanda, who will tell you briefly about some middle grade titles.
Hi everyone, I'm Fernanda, as Melissa said. I primarily work on paper books, middle grade, graphic novels, and Canadian authored books. The first of the 5 books I'm hoping to feature is A House in Poplar Wood by Catherine Ormsby. It was initially inspired by Godfather Death, a creepy tale by the Brothers Grimm. Set in a small town in Appalachia, the story features 13-year-old twins with unusual family life. Lee and his mother serve memory, while Felix and his father assist death. The boys live in the same house and can see each other, but not the other parent. This is the special agreement.
Can you just talk a little louder?
Oh, I'm sorry. Enter a mysterious, you hear that? Enter a mysterious death in town, and the mayor's daughter Gretchen, who is convinced the girl's passing was caused by death himself and not at the victim's allotted time to die, Gretchen convinces the 2 boys to join her in solving the death mystery by promising to help them break the unfair agreement that has separated their family for 13 years. Within these pages, you'll find a murder mystery, a Halloween bonfire, memories kept in glass jars, and even a magical St. Bernard. The story features a strong female protagonist, and it's a really interesting take on personified death as a key character. Next book is After Zero. In this book, this is not a coincidence that the author was also inspired by Brothers Grimm tale. In this case, it's 12 brothers. Young Elise carries a notebook full of tallies, each page marking a day spent in her new public school. Each stroke of her pencil marking a word spoken. 5 tally marks isn't so bad. 2 is pretty good, but 0 is perfect. 0 means no wrong answers called out in class, no secrets accidentally spilled, and no conversations to agonize over at night when sleep is far away. The author, like the central character in After Zero, also suffered from selective mutism as a child, and so she is able to deliver the story and get behind the thoughts and actions of the key character in a way that sounds very authentic. And selective mutism is when you can actually speak freely in one particular situation, like at home, but at school, sends you into a paroxysm of anxiety and fear and embarrassment, sort of like me here at the. Okay, so this is a powerful story with a bit of magic thrown in about a young girl whose self-enforced silence eventually begins to control her. It was excellent, especially the last three or four chapters. Next book is A Divided Earth by illustrated and written by Vancouver's own Faith Erin Hicks. It's the final book in the Nameless City series, and it delivers a heart-thumping conclusion to the adventures of allies Rat and Kaidu, who must work together to steal back the ancient and deadly formula for a weapon of mass destruction that threatens the survival of all who live in the Nameless City. The final book has it all: action, political strategy, secrets revealed, and moments that hit straight at the heart. Faith tends to handle politics in her series quite well. There is no real bad guy. She's able to portray both sides in a way that's captures all the nuance. The first 2 books in the trilogy have been nominated or won various awards, including most recently BC Book Prize for The Stone Heart in the Illustrated Children's Literature category. We're hoping to plan a number of public appearances this fall for Faith, so I hope to see some of you there. Next book is Blue Crown. You'll meet villainous peddlers, privateers, time-traveling agents, and even the odd immortal or two in Blue Crown, the latest book from New York Times bestselling author Kate Milford. Set in the magical green glass house world, the steeped in folklore fantasy about the house's first inhabitants reveals the origins of some of its many secrets. The story takes place in the early 1800s in a small harbor town called Nagaspeak, where young Lucy has left her life on board her father's ship and moved ashore with her mysterious stepmother and half-brother. She's bored and with her new life until her little brother, a pyrotechnics prodigy, is targeted by 2 strangers with very bad intentions. Lucy is then challenged to use her skills and fighting instinct to save her family. Above all, this is a story about love between family members, between mother and new daughter, and father and daughter, and also the emerging relationship between the young girl and her half-brother. It was a start review in the School Library Journal, resplendent with time travel, Chinese folklore, nautical explanations, and the history of Nagaspeak. This is a sophisticated tale filled with masterful world building, time travel, science, and nautical life. Great read. And the last book is one I have not read yet. We don't have ARCs. I actually read the first 2 chapters in a excerpt that you can find online on EW. And it's The Dark Deep. New York Times bestselling authors Ali Condé and Brendan Mix team up to co-author this thrilling first book in a darkly suspenseful middle grade series. When a bullying incident sends 12-year-old Nico Holland over the edge of a cliff into the icy waters of Still Cove, several friends rush to his rescue, only to discover an island hidden in the swirling mist below. As the 4 preteens explore this mysterious portal to a different world, their lives begin to intertwine in strange ways, and dark, deep secrets are revealed. This is a key title from Bloomsbury and has been described as Stranger Things meets the Goonies with a heart of Stand By Me with a bit of Lost thrown in. I know. It sounds really very interesting. I have a few arcs of After Zero and Blue Crown with me today. I also have the launch postcards for Tony Cliff's event on August 10th at Pulp Fiction, 7 p.m. And yes, and turn it over to you.
Well, good morning. I'm coming up here to talk was supposed to talk to you about Delilah Dirk. I'm going to talk to you about Bibliophile instead. I noticed there was a little graphic, I think of the Bennett Library up in the corner. Has anybody been there? So if you're ever in New Haven, Connecticut, or like reasonably close, make a trip to Yale University, because the Bennett Library is this big rectangular building with, and it's paneled entirely in this sort of thin marble. And when you're inside, the sunlight shines through into it. Yeah, this guy right here. The sunlight shines into it, and it's got this really warm glow inside. It feels like being inside, I don't know, like an amber gem or something. Yeah, it's really fun. It doesn't look like a lot from the outside, but it's amazing. Okay. I like libraries, as we'll probably get to in a little bit. But yeah, I have a presentation I would like to make. So, as promised today, I'm here to speak to you. This is the button on the bottom, right? Oh, not about this book, Delilah Dirk and the Pillars of Hercules. Can everybody hear me all right? And is it important that I speak into the microphone for the sake of?
Yes, if you could, but just or project really loud.
Right. So this time, 19th century England's premier brash adventuress, Delilah Dirk, has set out to uncover the secrets of an ancient hidden city. She is, as ever, accompanied by her longtime traveling companion, Mr. Erwin Salim, but is now joined by Dutch newspaper writer Lawrence van Hassel. Together, the three of them delve into tombs and scour ancient artifacts for hints of the location of the fabled third pillar of Hercules. Where is it? Why has its location been erased from any record? Their search takes them across the Mediterranean, from Turkey to the deserts of Africa and all the way back. Along the way, Delilah struggles with her feelings about the sort of recognition she receives in exchange for the noble favors she performs. But Van Hassel is a news reporter, and in him, Delilah sees an avenue for boosting her image. Van Hassel, in turn, imagines she will do the same for him. They run, and they fight, and they climb, and they battle their way across the Mediterranean, risking their lives and generating material for Van Hassel's stories. But what dangers will they unearth, both in their spelunking and in the stories Van Hassel tells? And what cruel truths are buried within the ancient city? You will find out in the pages of Delilah Dirk and the Pillars of Hercules on August 7th. It is a tale of fame and notoriety and about how difficult it can be to determine the truth of an old story. And as I said, has anybody read the previous? Okay, so a few of us. All right, so they are similarly set in Turkey or around the Mediterranean. Pillars of Hercules will be the third in the series. This one, Turkish Lieutenant, was the first. I started it in 2006, a very long time ago. And a question I get asked a lot about it is, what inspired you to write this? And again, this is a long time ago, so I don't remember very clearly. I think my motivations have become a little fuzzy since then, but still, when I try to explain, I see dissatisfaction on the question asker's face when I say plainly what I think is the correct answer. They seem underwhelmed, I seem puzzled. Perhaps they are hoping to hear, oh, my grandmother was a notable adventurer, or I am secretly Turkish, but neither of those is true. The truth is that I did what all the advice told me to do. I wrote the type of book that I wanted to read. And this is what I wanted to read. And this is what I wanted to watch. Some families had the Bible. Growing up, I had this. I loved Farsight too, and for better or for worse, and Doonesbury and Garfield. What I didn't know at the time, though, was that this was an introduction to a very powerful way of storytelling. And we could spend the entire afternoon here. I'm glad we have food. The entire afternoon decoding what is happening just in this one single comic strip here, but I will leave it at this for time's sake. Bill Watterson was speaking truthfully to his readers, and he was doing it with cleverness and humor and beauty. And there's this guy. I love the way these movies made me feel when I was 10 or so when I saw the first one. And when I thought about what I wanted out of my own book, the project I was making notes myself, I wanted to replicate that feeling. And I knew we couldn't just take the ingredients from Indiana Jones and duplicate them, because we've seen that done before, and the results have never quite matched up to the original example. And then there are these. So in high school, my friends assured me that Calvin and Hobbes, Far Side, and Garfield were not real comics, and that these were. So I started reading them, and I was a straight teenage boy, and they sucked me right in. Our relationship burned bright between me and these comics, but it did not burn long. And later, when I got around to thinking about my own project, I remembered the things that pushed me away from these books, and I wanted to try to fix some of those things, or at least avoid reproducing them. And then there are these guys. Horatio Hornblower on the left in the TV adaptation, Richard Sharp in a TV adaptation, Sean Bean in a rare role where he does not die. Prior to stumbling into the Hornblower books in my early 20s, if you had suggested that I would be the least bit interested in the Napoleonic Wars in which they are set, I would have laughed you to the ground. I associated that with history class, and history class, for me at least, was agonizing, absolutely agonizing. But these books weren't about names and dates, they were about characters, and the setting was rich and exciting, and it was a sandbox I could kind of play around in. So I would do what they told me, I would write the book I wanted to read, and I wanted to read more of this. And I knew it had to be a comic book for a few reasons. The comics medium, firstly, the comics medium allows one person, a single person, to relatively easily tell an outlandish imaginary story with major visual components, which clearly I was drawn to. And two, all of my friends were doing it. Now, I say that kind of flippantly, but back in the mid-2000s, Kazuki Buishi, author of the Amulet series now, he gathered a lot of people together to take part in the Flight comic anthologies, and well, never underestimate the power of peer pressure.
Yeah.
I apologize. So never underestimate peer pressure. This lovely gentleman on the end here, Douglas Holgate, is the illustrator of Clem Hetherington and the Ironwood Race out recently. He saw early Delilah pages and said, "You continue making this." And I said, "I don't know if I want to." He said, "Please do." I said, "Fine, done." So, all I needed were some tombs to raid and some treasures to steal, so I started doing research. I started looking for real-world examples because a real-world setting worked for Indy and Hornblower and Sharp. And by happy coincidence, at least for me, not for the inhabitants of Greece, by happy coincidence, in the early 1800s, we saw a lot of archaeological theft. Sail travel was becoming more accessible to middle and upper-class white Western Europeans, so more of them were sticking their noses into the Mediterranean, and at the same time, the aesthetics of ancient Greece and the exotic Orient had become fashionable. And since white Western Europeans are the way they are, if they saw something they liked, they took it. I dug through lots of books about Western travelers and their activities, but one especially stands out to me. It is this book. This is called Beauties of the Bosphorus. It was written by Miss Julia Pardo and illustrated by William Bartlett, and printed almost 200 years ago in about 1830, if I remember correctly. It is a travelogue of Istanbul and the surrounding areas, and it is chock full of beautiful, detailed illustrations. And Miss Pardo's writing conveys the type of things you don't get from history textbooks, like the way people got around and what they did in their free time and day-to-day things they cared about. This was a fantastic inspiration, amazing resource. I'd found tiny JPEGs of the illustrations online years before, and only through remarkable good fortune discovered that a copy of that book is kept here, up on the 7th floor. If you go up to the Special Collections Library right now and ask them nicely, they will let you borrow this book. You can touch it and flip through it and take photographs of it like I did. It is fantastic. I was very surprised to find this in Vancouver and can still get a little bit of excited about it. So we take all these things and we mash them together, and I think that goes a long way to explaining why this is what it is. A story about a free-spirited adventurer leading her duty-bound friend-to-be through adventures across the Turkish countryside. Maybe there's more to it. I'm not sure. At the time, though, just like my main character, I didn't think about it too much. I knew I was going to do it, and this is how. Everything starts here for me. From the very first book to the most recent, it's all loose notes in cheap notebooks. The cheaper the better, because you don't want any financial barrier getting between you and dumping out all your dumbest ideas. And I am a very firm believer that you have to dump out all the dumb ideas to make room for good ones. Sometimes it's visual stuff, like on the left. Most often it's just illegible text notes scribbled down after work or after a shower or when I'm supposed to be sleeping. And then eventually, when there are enough of those scribbly little notes, it's possible to sort of arrange them in a semi-sensible order. Once I have some of that, with the last 2 big Delilah Dirk books, I started taking those ordered notes and turning them into this, which is a complete prose-style manuscript of the story. And for those of you who are here, I have an enormous portfolio here full of, I'm walking through like a bunch of the process materials and stuff, and you can take a look at all of the bona fide original things here if you so wish. And I'll be hanging out around afterwards. You want to take a better look? How do we get all the way back there? Yeah, so this is the first step of my iterative process. Like doing the first lap around a racetrack, this is the first time I'll work all the way through the entire book from start to finish, ending up with a novel-style presentation of the whole story. This is also the first time I'll have something that I can show to my friends and to my editor for feedback. My second lap around the track looks like this. It's maybe a bit hard to see, but I take my manuscript and translate the whole thing start to finish into these small sketchy drawings. I like the iterative process because it lets me work on solving individual problems one at a time on each pass through the story. It lets me change things constantly without too much work. And at any time I can see what the project looks like as a whole. These benefits would not, of course, be available to me if I just started making final art from the first page to the last. Getting a little closer here. During this thumbnail lap, I ask questions like, what am I going to put in the last panel on the bottom of the right-hand page that will make my reader want to keep reading? And when the reader turns a page, what can I show them to surprise them? Because unlike a novel, as soon as a reader turns the page on a comic, they can see everything and they can parse every single image on the page, and you can decode and decipher everything immediately much more quickly. So it's important to account for that, and it's important to design for the reader and know I can't just focus on one drawing in one panel. The whole 2-page spread has to work together to form a coherent idea. The third time around, the track is similar, but the drawings are a little bigger this time. On this lap, I'm refining the composition I established in the thumbnail and trying different character poses and expressions and finding new details and making sure the word balloons will all fit. Once those drawings are complete, I scan them in and clean up all my illegible text, which gives me yet another complete look at the book and another thing that I can send to my editor and friends for feedback, which is, it's very important to me because if you write a joke or a song, you can go up on stage that night and perform it and know immediately whether people applaud for your music or laugh at your jokes. With a comic like this, there are at least 2 years, and even 2 years is a short amount of time, between when the work begins and when the final book comes out, and I'm not willing to wait that long to know whether a joke is funny or whether an idea works. I look for feedback whenever I can. Then the hard work begins. In order to make the scribbly drawings and illegible text palatable to a reading public, I spend about a year or so completing clean final art, which starts like this. Zoom in a little bit. It's pencil on paper, as you can see, if you, again, would like to see in the originals. Because I like getting away from the computer as much as possible. One of the perks of the job is I can do this on the couch or in the park, if I so wish. All of this gets scanned in, the blue stuff gets removed, if you can see the blue stuff. And I darken the pencil lines a little. The coloring is performed digitally, because it's fast and clean and convenient, and I can make it bold and colorful like the superhero comics I enjoy. I use, for example, a complete sheet of all the characters in their different costumes. I can just sample the colors up there, pull them up there. I can tint it warmer or tint it cooler, which looks a little weird right now, but in context, it adds believability. To keep things consistent throughout the book, I'll go through and take a few important panels from the story and do rough color treatments on them. Here you can see some of the palette choices I made. So you just like take the whole color wheel and say, no, we're just going to use these ones. As well as a little bit of photo reference for the sky and the sort of mood that we want for that panel up at the top there. And then once the color is all complete, I add the text back in, and that is about it. I send the files off to my publisher for a second, where a dedicated team of professionals turns those files into actual books. And then they're out there in the world doing the thing that books do and spreading ideas around. And then, once my first book came out in 2013, it started in 2006, it hit shelves in 2013. 7 years after I started, a lot of time to think about things. But an interesting thing happened with that perspective and that distance and that removal from the busy work of making the project. I started thinking differently about it, and other people got hold of it and had conversations with those people, of readers and librarians and booksellers, and I heard their experiences with the book, and I started to consider things that I hadn't considered before. Maybe there were other, deeper, harder to articulate inspirations at work. Like, I didn't know that if a woman and a man are main characters, they're generally expected to kiss before the end of the book, and that's fine. But to me, that didn't feel true. And I didn't know parents would see a comic book with a woman on the front and decide that it wasn't suitable for their sons who could probably use a story about a man and a woman whose relationship is platonic and friendly. And perhaps they believe that a boy cannot relate to or empathize with a character who isn't their same gender, but that didn't feel true to me. Or maybe, deep down, I was worried that people half my age who all grew up after 9/11 happened and their entire life have been fed a media diet of frightened white people asserting that the Middle East is a savage place suitable only for breeding terrorists. We know that can't possibly be true, because we all know better than to paint an entire group of people with one broad brush to essentially dehumanize an entire swath of people for superficial reasons like nationality or region, religion, or color. And that's a really serious idea. I mean, we heard earlier about, this is an important book. And a lot of people might say, put those serious ideas into serious books or into important books. And here's one thing I absolutely know for sure. 16-year-old me would not have touched a serious book with a 10-foot pole. He did not want to read that. He wanted to watch this and read that. He wouldn't have touched your serious ideas. But fortunately, as we knew from reading Bill Watterson, you can speak truthfully to your readers and make it funny and entertaining and beautiful. And someone might argue, but we should speak directly and plainly address topics of importance. And you're right. And that will work for a lot of people. And those become important books of great value. But I can say with absolute certainty, 16-year-old me was very good at sussing out serious ideas and avoiding them. And he knew, but he also knew, conversely, deep down, when he was being spoken to honestly. He just needed you to sort of sneak his truths into him, dressed up like this. So, which of these factors inspired these books? Is it frivolous ones or a desire to speak serious ideas to a 16-year-old. The truth is, I cannot weigh the inspirational factor of Indiana Jones against, say, the desire to represent a mutually respectful cross-cultural friendship, which perhaps leaves us at an unsatisfying, ambiguous conclusion. But that is perfectly appropriate because, like I said, one of the themes of this book is how difficult it can be to determine the truth of a story. Yes, Killers of Hercules is an honest-to-goodness, globe-trotting, tomb-raiding, sword-swinging adventure story, but it is also about the idea that it's very difficult to ascribe certainty to anyone's past motivations. And I look forward to everyone being able to read it in August. Thank you. I understand what the answer is. Yes?
Yes. Amanda from Twitter is wondering, will we have even more Delilah in the future?
Like after this one? Oh, I can say I'm working on it, but with more certainty than that, I cannot say.
And what's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
What is the best piece of advice I've ever received? I don't know if it's advice, but I have read, because when you start getting involved with a lot of this stuff, you start looking up and looking for advice anywhere you can find it. I will say, Austin Kleon, the writer, writes a lot about creativity and personal expression, is a tremendous resource of inspiration and advice. One of my high school art teachers gave me an anatomy book and at graduation he says, "Here, keep drawing," and that was good advice. There's also very good advice like be polite to the people you have to work with and be nice to be around because that will be important. You can't just draw pretty pictures. And I've received a lot of advice that there is a skill I think that you need to. You mentioned Publishers Weekly reviews. Was that for the third book?
Yes.
Oh, I haven't read that yet. So this is exciting. Like one of the skills we have been, I say we, speaking sort of like I guess for animators, I was an animator, am an animator. One of the skills that they try to build, we try to build, is an ability to detach yourself from evaluations of your work. So say, if somebody says my book is garbage, that doesn't mean I'm garbage, that sort of thing. That is a very difficult skill to build up, but also a very valuable skill to build up too. So that sort of realm is sort of advice I treasure dearly.
Okay, and last question is, Delilah Durkin, the Turkish lieutenant, has been optioned by Disney for a movie. Is there anything you can tell us about that?
Is there anything I can tell you about that? No. Unfortunately not.
Is there anything you will say?
Is there anything I will tell you? No. As you phrased your question that way. That is how I will answer it. And that is how I'm allowed to answer it. It's a very exciting thing. I'm extremely excited to, for something to happen. And also, I'm just going to approach it cautiously. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. That was awesome.
We'll also be around after in case somebody again wants to talk to me. Thank you.
Okay, and now it's time for our prizes. So the first prize that we have is the Sadie prize pack, which features an ARC of Sadie, a Sadie poster, and a super exclusive Sadie hoodie. And we're giving away 2 of these prize packs. So now we will draw names. Do you want to draw your names?
Okay. First Sadie winner.
Oh, Bethany in Toronto. Congratulations. Oh, and Danielle Lee in Vancouver. Yay, congratulations. Okay, and the next prize pack we have is an Empress of All Seasons prize pack, which features an ARC of Empress of All Seasons and gifts to represent each of the seasons, including a pumpkin spice scented candle, winter reading socks, spring scented bath salt, and a summer scented candle. So you can be an Empress of All Seasons. And the winner is Kathy, who's watching online. Congratulations, Kathy, from Atlanta. Okay, and our last prize is the Grim Lovelies prize pack, which features a specially packaged ARC of Grim Lovelies, a Grim Lovelies lip balm, Grim Lovelies pins, a Grim Lovelies engraved diamond paperweight, some beautiful Paris-themed books, along with an Eiffel Tower organizer, and a one-on-one Skype interview with the author Megan Shepherd. And the winner is Giselle from Book Nerd Canada, who's watching online. Congratulations! I'll be in touch with all the winners after the event. And just before we break into discussion and disconnect from our Toronto group, I want to give an enormous thank you to Laura, Jen, and Chris, our fabulous Toronto hosts, along with the Vancouver Public Library for co-hosting this event with us. Thank you to everyone for joining us. And if you're online, you can keep watching and join in the discussion with us on Twitter. Thank you.
Okay, discussion time. Our first and always favorite question is, what books are you guys most anticipating?
Sadie looks amazing.
Yeah. Have you read Courtney Summers before?
I have, yeah, but yeah, all of her previous ones. I'm very excited.
They're dark reads, but they're so honest and authentic. Yeah.
It's compelling. The Flawless verse it looks so good. Well, I remember my physician pitched it was a gender bent Beowulf, and I'm like, yes, kid, yes.
So many people are excited for that one. Including our friend Vanessa. She's on mat leave right now, but she just died when she got her copy of it.
Yes. Really looking forward to Johnny with Will instead of like a paper. Because I followed her on Twitter for a while, so I've like seen it as it's coming up. And I'm like, whoa.
I was so happy to get that book the first time. I was so into it.
Fruit of Stars, just because of how Massive Shadows ended. Like, damn it. Kidnapping again. How does it end?
The graphic novels on the Sunbeam and Check Please.
Oh,
Yeah, Check Please looks really, yeah, they look amazing. Both of those. Tilly Walton's spinning is beautiful.
I loved spinning.
Yes.
So good.
Yeah, so I'm really excited for these two.
Check Please is so funny if you've read it online. It's all online, so you can just go read it online. And like,
It's much better.
yeah. I have certain reservations about Check Please, not because of the story, because the story is amazing, but because I've already read it and now for a second just picked it up after Gozi's put so much time and work into Kickstarting and everything. I'm just like, okay, is this just going to be another, like, you forcing me to buy another copy of it? So I'm like, I'm sort of on the fence, but the story is still so
She has put some extra content in it that I quite enjoyed. Like, there's
Well, it's like, she's Kickstarting for year 3 right now, so I'm like, yes, because I've read all this. I'm just like, I'm not knocking publishers picking up webcomic artists, because there's so many really good webcomics out there, like Magnolia Pearl's Monster Pulse, or Tim Siddle's Gutter Creek Core, or Core Big Skin Deep. These are such good comics that need like a wider audience that a publisher would just give them. But it's like, it's already out there, and I've already given them my money, and it's like, it is just more the introduction of the third party, and I'm just like,
I
I'm excited for the house in Poplar Wood. It's the first time I've heard about it, and it sounds very, very like good. I like the two kids and then the parents being separated. That sounds super.
Stunning cover. I love it. Is anybody reading something right now they're really excited about?
Well, now you have lots of books.
I'm very interested in Blanca and Roja by Emily Clever. I am obsessed with Brothers Grimm, I'm obsessed with fairy tales, and I'm also obsessed with the Little Swans. So I love that that's now in book format. And everything like swan related. I think there's a couple of different stories, but altogether it looks like it's gonna be really good.
Yeah, I feel like she always takes us by surprise. Her last book, like Wild Beauty, took us by surprise. Everyone loved that, and then people are really excited about this one. When we sent out the mail packages, everybody was sending us pictures of that book. I was like, okay, so it's got this like hidden fan base out there.
Okay.
I know I'm really excited for Salt, because it's really hard to find YA books that focus on a family dynamic and don't have a romance. Like, I know at least in our story, kind of a lot of people will be like, do you have any teen books with no romance? And it's like, no!
That one looks so good. And
Yeah.
Don't
have romance, you got sea monsters for you.
Oh, yeah. We showed a couple of the slides there, but the publishers' slides have all these Stranger Things comparisons to the plot line, and it just makes you want to read it so much.
There's a lot of Stranger Things comparisons.
Yeah.
Stranger Things comparisons, there we go. It's coming up.
It's so hot right now.
Right. But all the youths are into these days. Makes it hashtag relatable.
Does anybody have books that they've read already this year that they loved and want to share?
The graphic novel of Speak by Laura Halstenson. I love how they got Emily Carroll to do the artwork for that. Emily's art just fits so well. Emily's just like long, thin fingers, and just the line work, like, oh, it's just so good. Just nailing the story about women and her depression following her reign.
Right. Did you read the story before the graphic novel, or that?
I knew the story, but I hadn't read it.
Speaking of like depression in books, the one that really impressed me was The Astonishing Colored Raptor by Emily Exarpan. And it deals with kind of like the family relationships around having a mother with depression. And then it goes into the main character like end up going to Taiwan, where her mother's from, and learning about her family that was never, and like whole culture that was never explained to her, while also dealing with the fallout of her mother's depression. And it's all about like culture and learning about yourself and learning about how the small acts affect other people in your life, even if you've never met them. And it was beautiful to read. It's one of my favorite contemporaries. I'm not even a big contemporary reader. And then that came out and I was like, I work at a bookstore, so like I'm plastering my stuff and sticker over every single copy. Like it was so good. Really happy about it.
You were mentioning webcomics a little bit, and I'm a big fan of the sort of try it before you buy it type of consumerism, I guess. But like, so Delilah Dirk was always designed to be a graphic novel on paper that you buy in a store from a real publisher and everything. And I spent a very long time getting rejected by agents and publishers because I finished the book. So I just and was getting rejections for about, I don't know, a year and a half, maybe just a year. Decided, I'll just put this on the internet then, see if anybody likes it, and then received attention from publishers. And once you have attention from publishers, it's very easy to get the attention of agents, and then it's easier to get the attention of other publishers.
Or if you're seized by profit, just do it yourself.
Sorry?
Or if you're seized by profit, just do it all yourself, because you don't want to do it. But like,
Yeah, but that business part is not fun.
well, no, it's not.
Yeah, I'm very glad for the webcomics. You know, that book would not exist if we didn't have webcomics. I don't think. I'm assuming. But
Any other books they loved this year? It doesn't have to be ours. It could be any book.
Yeah. There was another graphic novel
book Be Prepared by Vera
I just
Roswell,
read that.
which I loved it. I was surprised by it, and I just thought it was so interesting and so beautifully drawn, and I just kind of gushed on it when I was reviewing, because I was surprised by it and I loved it. Yeah, it's really good.
Our data specialist at work read that book and loved it so much. She like wrote a review for it, and like we've been having a lot of in-house discussions about it.
I know one that I read this year was Landscape with Invisible Hand, and like, I was never able to get it to take off, and I didn't even know it existed, because I just like happened to pick up an arc one day, because it's like, I forgot my normal book, I'll read this, and I ripped through it in one night. Like, it's not a big book, but like, that's still a lot, and like, it's just fantastic about like colonialism and like what it means to be a person like living under like a technologically advanced people, where like now, like the story itself is like aliens have come to Earth and they have all the means of production, but it also means that now humans can't get work, so like everyone's living in extreme poverty. So you read the entire thing and there are like all these punches where it's like, oh, this is what it's like for someone living in Hawaii right now, like if you live in a tourism culture, but like without being, like it's still like accessible enough that like teens can get it. And like, I try to tell people, but I said, no one reads it. I'm just like, please, we have so many copies that I ordered in. It's so good.
It's like a permanent stack.
Yeah, exactly.
I found that your genre, in terms of perhaps change, as you prefer more contemporary, fantasy, science fiction, have any of you made any changes in the last year?
More comics.
More
More comics. Things are so visual. Just like I'd love to see more comics about everything. More graphic novels about everything. I was reading Zoraida Cordova's Bruja Born. If anyone knows Jen Barthel's art, that would be amazing. Just have Jen Barthel's like edgy Lisa Frank style artwork, just with like magic and Brooklyn and just weird dead monsters. It'd be so good. I love how people latched on to Jen Wang's The Prince and the Dressmaker.
Yeah.
I love how that took off. It's such a good story.
Yeah, that one was really good. That's first second. Yeah. Well, we got another question. This one's a little more pointed. In this upcoming season, we noticed a lot of books featuring monsters of all kinds. What do you think this possible new trend in YA is saying? Why do you think it's kind of come about? You know, we kind of see this every year, a new pattern. What do you guys think of this one?
There will always be monsters. It just depends on what they look like. Like someone was saying, it was a couple months ago or something, someone was like, so are vampires okay now? Can we bring these back? I was like, we'll save that. There'll always be monsters. Just with the current garbage news, it's very obvious to pick them out now. So it's like, they'll be there. It's just going to be, how much you going to hide them? Always going to be big.
It seems like mermaids were gonna have a moment, and now it's like sea monsters. Is anybody else looking forward to some monster breeds? Like, not even bones sounds really great. But
Like, I love the Savage Song. I mean, I love Yishua, like, but this Savage Song was really cool. I liked it was really gritty, but it also was. It's a gritty, hardcore, psychological fantasy novel, and it didn't have all of this like, oh, but they're so in love at the same time. Like, let's make this like a teen book. It was just like, get what you get. It was awesome, and it was dark, and it was wonderful. There's tons of monsters, and like, I love this whole dark fantasy thing that's now a solid. It's not a trend anymore, which I'm really happy about. So, and I'm just looking through these, like, there's so many monsters, and there's sea monsters, and there's other actual psychological monsters, and there's falconer monsters, and I don't know. There's a lot of there's villains. I don't know. It sounds really, really awesome.
First thing that popped in my head when you asked that question was backlash against zombies in general. There's a bit of I hate zombies out there, and vampire backlash as well. And then I thought it might even be more politically rooted with you create a villain or society that has a villain. How do you describe that culture? And you reflect, because everyone writes from what they know, and people are getting offended. But monsters aren't real, so it's an easy villain.
Yeah. the next question we had was, diversity is something that's been talked about for years now. Do you think it's gotten where it needs to be in publishing? How do you guys feel about it right now in the publishing landscape? Is it there? It's obviously gotten better. Is it enough?
Well, naturally not enough, like until there's more diversity in storytelling to the point where we don't have to talk about diversity, which I don't know that we will be getting in the next like 5, 10, 15 years. But yeah, it's interesting seeing the kind of shift that's happening now where we are getting more our stories and that like more LGBTQ characters and more like even fantasy novels that sort of take place outside of like a Eurocentric sort of fantasy world. It's kind of nice seeing it kind of diversify a little bit.
And then just adding on to that, I feel like it'll be enough when we're not surprised when there's the diverse character or diversity in a book. When it's just like, oh, like you expect it, or you have a character that's diverse, you're just like, all right, it's just like another character for me. I feel like now when I pick up a book and there's like a diverse character, or when I read Mask of Shadows, I was very surprised to see the gender fluid character. So I feel like once we see it happen often enough that it's not surprising us, that'll be enough.
And when it's not called out as a part of the book, like which we kind of started seeing happening, like where it's not called out and then you read the book and like, wow, they didn't even mention that, they didn't have to.
Yeah. Well, it's also easier to see racial diversity in graphic novels too. It's just like, oh, okay, everyone was there. Like, there's so many graphic novels where it's just like, okay, everyone's here. Like, it's not just full of white people. Like it was for someone. It's like, okay, it is.
I think, yeah, fantasy has always been really good with diversity. The contemporary, not so much. And so we've definitely seen like a better direction for contemporary. So that's really good. I mean, I don't think fantasy was really as much lacking before. Even comic books, like they were totally ahead of their time. But contemporary is where there should be more, and it's going in a good direction.
I just want to disagree with you.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I feel like, okay, we're gonna say nowadays, but like the last little while, it's been more, there's been more published that's under either own voices or there's just more people being like, oh, well, not everyone in the world's white, let's just, you know, put some other characters in there. I feel like fantasy novels was very Eurocentric for a really long time. Like everything, like if you go to the fantasy section, like 98% of those are like white dudes with like a sword. And then you're like, all right, cool, so this is like general fantasy. I think now that we're getting more, and what have you. So I feel like almost all of contemporaries now have diverse characters on the covers or the main characters or what have you. And fantasy is kind of like slowly starting. We had that whole trend of like Arabian mythology, which I'm super for, and then we got more of Asian mythology, and now we have, well, I guess that's 10. Oh no, that's actually very German. But now we're getting more on here. The first one, Mirage. Yeah, okay, like first fantasy novel on the list, like I'm down for it now.
We're inclusive in
landscape. I think it also depends on like how you want to approach diversity, where like contemporary novels, you're getting a lot more diverse characters, but because of like it is contemporary, a lot of the stories end up focusing on the fact that like this is their identity and this is what they're dealing with. Whereas when you're introducing that in fantasy, it's just like, it's fantasy, none of it's real. Like you can just be what you are and it's fine. So it's like, I feel like across the board it's getting better, but it would be nice in contemporary novels to see stories where the focus doesn't have to be on this identity. It can be, this is part of their identity and they're having a story about them.
Yeah, that's the thing where it's a book with, you know, I like reading books with gay characters, not necessarily books about gay characters.
Yeah,
and I like both, don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying like it's nice now that it's just like, oh, this character is, you know, X, Y, or Z. They're just there, and it's not all about like, this person is just like not amazing.
Yeah. We don't need constant coming out stories.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like,
I assume that we're all avid readers here. So I went to a reader's advisory workshop where the keynote speaker discussed diversity in reading and how we talk about being well-read and reading things that are canonized, written by, you know, white male authors, and that being sort of the pinnacle of what you're supposed to, what determines what a good reader is. But then she talked about how being widely read is so much more important. And so she discussed the concept of tracking your reading and tracking the diversity of your reading. And so just creating like a Google spreadsheet and being like, how many books in this year did I read featured a person of color? Was the author a person of color? And were they writing from their own perspective? And so when I did it for a year, I noticed that I read only one book that featured a character with a disability. And that was really interesting to see, and it was shocking to see, and counting out things. So it makes you more mindful of how you're reading it. So something I think you definitely Google diversity tracking sheets where people have already been creating templates. And it's really I like data and looking at numbers and being okay, so I read 25 books by female authors this year. That's awesome. But then looking at where you're reading lacks certain things. So I think when you say, oh, we're reading diversity, but so it's really great to see that short story collection that featured authors that had disabilities and learning those stories as opposed to just people reading it. So
that's the first time I've heard of one that's centered on characters with disabilities, anthology and stories.
I'm very interested in that particularly because the last year was diagnosed with chronic illness. So that's really weird kind of going into that as my whole life I've been quote unquote normal and now there's a thing that's going to be a part of my life, my chronic pain. So I'm looking at this being oh, in a whole new light of just oh, it's never going to happen to me, it's just like someone else. And now that that's here, I really am now interested to see this. And I also read my first book with a disabled main character just this year, and it was very eye-opening. And now I'm I want to read it all now, and I think that that's going to be a new wave of diversity. Because first it was race, and now it's authors, and now it's disabilities or illnesses or what have you. And I'm really excited to read it.
Well, we'll wrap up the formal discussion part, but feel free to keep talking, grab donuts, some drinks from the lemonade bar, and ask Tony and Cliff any questions and take a look at his portfolio. And thank you guys all for coming. Yeah. So here's one.